Well then, I don't see any reason not to call this meeting to order. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
I don't know what else there is to say besides. Bring up the minutes in case you haven't looked at them, remember what's there. See if there's anything you wish to do anything about besides make a motion to approve the minute.
I would move to approve minutes.
I will second that.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I had some discussion or some lack of clarity on our Appendix 7 discussion at the last time, but I'm over it now, so we're good. I second it.
All right. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. The minutes are approved. On to Appendix 2 items. Steve, are you?
Want a little background here?
Are you responsible
I was
for
gonna
this massive?
I am, so I'll give
Did
you.
you want this to be like some sort of holiday present?
Let me walk. Oh, go ahead.
If just as a carryover from the previous iteration of this committee, that was, this was something, Appendix 2 review was something that was started on last year's, the
Okay.
second year of the 3-year cycle. And we were awaiting first the Hanover report, which
then-
got started in April but came in the summer. And then we were awaiting, I think, the RISE.
We were waiting on the DE, so
The DE.
I can give you a quick update. So the stuff that you have in front of you, Brian's right, we started last year, and we went kind of back to the beginning. So you've got the Iowa Code and the Iowa State's school licensure standards. You got the IASB stuff that IASB and SAI did some work together, and we developed some things. Then there were some questions asked by the board at the time, so we asked Hanover to do some follow-up on it. And then after we'd done all that work, we got notification from the Council on Educator Development from the Iowa Department of Ed, telling us that they are looking at a uniform evaluation for teachers and administrators. And so statewide, and so the conversation we had at that point in time was, wait a minute, do we want to spend time trying to develop a new evaluation tool if the state is going to mandate one for teachers and administrators? And so then I had some conversation with Ryan Wise, the new director for the Department of Ed, and he has provided me a timeline. And they are planning, they've got a set of initial recommendations, which they are processing as we speak, that will go back to the committee or the council. And then following that, they plan to have final recommendations late this summer, early this fall, for the statewide teacher evaluation and the statewide administrator evaluation. That's all certified teachers and all certified administrators. So art, music, PE, guidance, library, you name it, administrators, principals, system principals, deans, whoever is an administrator. And so they're planning to have that for this fall, late this summer, early this fall, with a recommendation. I did ask him, is the intent for this to be implemented in the 16-17 school year? It's kind of an it depends. It depends on how soon they get that recommendation through, because as Tom knows, we start our evaluation process with our teachers within 3 weeks into the school year. We're already starting. So I shared that with Ryan and our concern about the timelines we work with teachers, even though I was talking to about it in the context of administrators. So part of the conversation that we had was if we indeed are looking at making any changes to the superintendent evaluation tool, which is where we'd started this conversation with the previous board, we had looked at those IASB SAI materials, and that's the Iowa Association of School Boards and School Administrators of Iowa. So it's a professional organization that represents administrators. Those are the materials that they developed back in 2008. So we were going to use that as our framework, but it sounds now like the DE is going to impose something over the top of that. And so knowing that they're gonna have a mandated evaluation tool, I guess at this point in time, my recommendation would be not to develop a new tool that's simply gonna be superseded by the DE within the next 8 or 9 months.
So, thank you.
So
Oh, go ahead.
which of these documents would that thing basically replace?
I,
Is it the one that says ICCSD superintendent evaluation on it?
yes, and that is in the materials,
Or is
correct?
it appendix to itself?
No, it's the, let me see which one it is on here,
It's-
sorry.
yeah.
Yes,
Five.
It's that.
Yep.
yeah, it's the one
That's
that you
the
got right
tool-
there.
That's the tool roughly that we've
Yes.
used.
And then there's actually Sally Holscher, I believe, developed the original one where she actually took this and turned it into a checklist, or it has room for feedback and has some boxes in there that Sally developed and then Chris refined. And so it would, now, as far as I understand, if you look at that one that you have right there, I don't think it will change the, you see standard 1, standard 2, standard 3. I'm not sure that it's
Right, those
changing
come from
those, right? Because those originally came from ISLIC, the Interstate Licensure Coalition. So I don't think that it's replacing those, but I think the format would be, it will be different than this because this was developed in-house. And then the tool itself, as I understand it from Ryan, will be a mandated tool.
So the standards in this thing, standard 1, standard 2, et cetera.
Right.
That's what this statute is referring to as the Iowa Standards for School Administrators adopted pursuant to 256.7.
Right, and that's the one in attachment 2.
Yeah. But the sub things underneath standard 1, 2, and 3, that's coming from our own policies. For example, standard 1, and underneath it says point number 1 ends policies, point number 2 learning
Right.
environment. That's from us.
That's from us, and those come from the superintendent limit, or directions, and the ends policy is the other components of our board policy piece. So the one thing that will be missing, which will be a little bit unfortunate from that if it winds up being a state mandated one, is we wind up missing the direct linkage that we create to our own policies. So we'll have to figure out whether we can build those in independently. He was very uncertain of the level of flexibility that we will get as a district. And Tom knows this, our tool is a negotiated tool with our
Right.
association. So I'm not sure what level of flexibility we get, whether we're working with our teachers association or working with the administrators
Well,
on that tool.
If all they're, if what they've got in mind is just to change, say, the standards, like, which they did, I can't remember when, sometime in around the 2000s, it seemed to be when they came up with the 8, the 8 core learning things, and then, you had to provide, evaluate, you had to provide evidence for, okay, so,
These things actually look like they are a more formal codification of those evidence pieces
Okay.
that link to those.
All right.
So,
Well, if they cut out the redundancy for this stuff, whether it's for the teachers or for the administration, I'm all in favor. Because there was stuff, I mean, you end up triple listing a piece of evidence.
Right.
Because it fits under 3 different.
and that's what we
evaluation
discovered when we were looking at the IASB SAI materials, that there are many evidence pieces that fit here, here,
Yeah.
here, and here, type of thing, as opposed to the other way around. What's the evidence and what does it link to?
Right.
So,
And back up one step further.
yeah.
As far as what you're supposed to, or we're supposed to do for tonight, which of these things are in the list of things that we are supposed to be reviewing? Is it appendix 2 alone? Or
Yes.
is it appendix 2 plus these,
It's appendix 2 alone.
Okay.
so it doesn't, we're not reviewing, sorry. Where did it go? Well, we're not even supposed to be reviewing this then.
Correct.
And, okay, so, yeah, we're not reviewing things like,
Really,
board
it's not-
policies.
Right.
Board
Mostly this.
superintendent, I mean, it's
Right.
really just appendix 2 and everything else, just informational background for us.
What we had
Right.
done as a board committee last time was we had taken the tangent of saying, should we be looking at an evaluation tool that is more closely aligned to what IASB recommends, and so that's why you have all those pieces in there. So
Yeah.
we put a kind of a break on reviewing Appendix 2 formally, and we're looking at the actual tool itself.
I'll have to save all my notes on those other things.
Just as a point of procedure here, and I think Mr. Liebig's question here outlines this. I mean, it was just if you're going, if you in particular are going to load a whole bunch of stuff onto the appendix agenda item, would you mind telling us why? You're gonna do
Certainly.
that, so that.
Yep.
So that I
Some
mean,
narrative would help,
It would, yeah,
especially since it's a carryover.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, see, I was kind of lucky because I was able to pull it up and already had all my notes, so I had saved
Oh, there
it
you
from the
go.
last time that we discussed this.
Wow.
So effectively, the three of us are all at three different places.
Mhm.
You know? Yeah.
I mean, I took a moment actually to go back and go through the minutes from our meetings, you know, back in May and June and July 7th. The way we left it was Steve will take framework and convert so it has linkage, and then we got news that there was going to be this more formulaic statewide way of doing things, and everything went on hold. So unfortunately, this is the last bit of carryover from last year's
Right,
work.
okay, wow, yeah. And it helps only to get us to the point where we now know that the state's got something else in mind. So we go ahead with looking through the process right here and going ahead with what we have in place at the moment, right?
Right,
Because we
I
don't
think the
have
best
any other-
bet's to use that tool that's already in place.
Yeah, I mean, just having been through 2 evaluations and you being through 5, I think you've probably seen great variability from year to year.
Yeah.
The way that Sally ran the evaluative process throughout the 13-14 year was different than the way that Chris ran the evaluation process through the 14-15 year. We made 14-15 more of a 360-degree evaluation that involved IASB representation.
I
ICEA.
see.
Sorry, sorry about that, ICEA.
Yeah.
And then we had other administrators that
Right.
you work with on a daily basis here involved. And it was a little bit more collaborative approach than just the board.
But neither approach is necessarily inconsistent with Appendix 2.
No.
Correct. They're both in line with Appendix 2, and actually in the board governance one that you held up with the shared vision and that stuff,
Yeah.
those things are in line with the state superintendent standards for Iowa.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't know if it needs a motion for us as a committee to say we're just gonna table this thing until there's more information, or do we just decide to table it until?
No, because it's just part of the annual review cycle, so I think what happens if the state mandates a teacher tool, if the state
Right.
mandates a superintendent tool, because I think it's to Chris's point, none of those processes were not in line with Appendix 2. The reason that the board even referred it for discussion to the committee was because of that lack of consistency year
Right.
over year. And so where there was some conversation about, should we develop a tool as an appendix
Right.
to
So,
Appendix 2, so that there was actually a formal tool that the board adopted, and so that's why all of this got to this point, was should there be a tool rather than just a process?
if you look under the SAI materials. Oh, yeah.
The
Well,
actual,
Like a form?
yeah, the actual form, should there be a form that was used? Because every year they used a different form to get to that one that you held up that has the standards on it. So different board presidents develop different tools to try to elicit that information, and so one of the questions the last time around was, should the tool be standardized so that there's consistency year over year?
The previous committee, Patty and Jeff and I had felt that it was only fair to whoever our superintendent is now or in the future, that that person know from year to year what they're being evaluated on, and not from leadership to leadership.
Right,
Because board leadership
Right.
can change.
Membership can change too.
right.
And at least this would be on a 3-year rotating basis, since we look at Appendix 2 every 3 years, but now the state's gonna tell us what we have to do.
So you're saying it's this tool that the state's gonna come in and give us anyways?
That's what it sounds like. They're gonna mandate a teacher and an administrator eval tool.
Like, if you look under the SAI materials, number 4, there's superintendent eval years 1, 2, and then superintendent evaluator 3, so it was on a 3-year cycle. And we thought that it would be a good idea to have a 3-year cycle, so at least, you know, the superintendent knows for 3 years what they're being gauged
But
by.
but the tool is different than the procedure.
Correct.
So we still have this as a procedure, basically. I had a hard time. It seemed like the procedures and the standards are all mixed together and they're not separate. And the standards I found to be sort of so broad and vague as to be meaningless at the time. I don't know how you feel about it. I don't know if I want to be subject to totally meaningless standards.
Well, and that was part of the problem, because then for a board president, you've got that set of standards. You've got our attempt to try to connect them to our board policy, and now how do you assess that? And I think that was where it got even murkier, if you will.
I
So-
mean, I can't think of any the right way to do it. It's trying to reduce this very complex thing into some kind of rubric, and I don't know what can be done.
Have you run in, I mean, I know we've run into this with evaluation of like our residents, and I'm sure.
Well, the students, they all want a rubric, I don't want to give it to them.
Right,
I won't give it to them.
right.
That's the rubric. I say, okay, is it well analyzed? Is it well written? Is it well organized? Here's your rubric. The whole semester is trying to tell them what's the right way to, what the expectations are. So, I don't know, I'm skeptical of the whole process of trying to break that down, but I understand you can't have nothing.
I know, I'm interested to see what the state comes up with, because I'm always a big fan of meet standard and then 2 steps on either side of that, you know, as far as exceeding or really exceeding, and I mean, defining what those exceptional, or giving examples of what is or what isn't.
This seems just like a hopeless enterprise. Am I crazy?
Well, we've spent the better part of a year and a half trying to do this.
Correct.
Well, one thing I don't understand, I understand, you know, a lot of this stuff struck me as documents people seem to be writing because they were compelled to, but not because they knew why they were writing them. And, you know, there's different reasons why you can have this type of document. Certainly, the evaluation process can serve to, you know, tell you what we want, and what we want you to be doing differently, and that's fine. But it doesn't seem to be connected up, and maybe it's not supposed to be. Or I wasn't seeing how it was connected up to the whole decision of renewal of the contract, or, you know, am I wrong?
No, I don't, no.
Do we have any sort of policy about standards for when we will renew or not renew? Do we, I mean, we don't want.
Timeline.
I mean, the contract itself says it's at our discretion, and that's all it ever says anywhere? I mean, I understand why, but if it's not connected up to that, if I were the superintendent, that would make me anxious, right? I mean, I don't know what can be done about it, but, again, I can see how it's useful to still get this evaluation process, but I would think as an employee, I would want to know, A, yeah, what do you want me to do, and B, what are you going to fire me for? And I'm not getting the sense of B at all. And I don't know how you can do it, you know, I don't know how you can do it.
Yeah, and I asked Ryan to see if I could get some more details going down that pathway with this, because I'm thinking about it not just in terms of the administrators, but I'm thinking about it in terms of the teachers too, because knowing that we've gone through the negotiation process of developing a tool that we think gives us some of that.
Right.
My question was, will we find ourselves in a similar position with the 1,000 certified staff members that we have? He was not able to answer that because that's their next step, is developing the tool. So he couldn't even give me structural framework for what they're doing with that.
Well, legally, if we have a contract with people, I don't see what the state can do. I mean, when it comes time to renew the contract, we might have to do
Yeah.
the stuff that they do.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not that the evaluation tool in the negotiated agreement is negotiated particularly when the state mandates the framework, but how it's implemented to some extent, and when does make a difference to us. Now, you know, by the same token, we don't necessarily want a 75 or 80-page negotiated agreement for superintendent and administrators, you know. But again, you know, the wonderful thing about that and the thoroughness of it is that it covers a whole lot of stuff, so that, you know, if you need to ask a question, you know, the answer's probably in there someplace. This is one of agreement that Jim Peterson and I always had. You know, when in doubt, what does the negotiated agreement
Right.
say? Because it's probably in there
Yeah.
somewhere. And your point about this being vague and multi-directional in some respects is well taken, because it certainly does seem
Well, and
to
some of
be
it comes from
that.
those 6 things that come from the state. I mean, I read them and
Some
I
of
think,
it.
what is this intended to exclude? I can't figure out.
I can't either.
So it just seems like this exercise, going through the motions.
Well, yeah. But, yeah.
The good news is the way that we've used it in the past is directional, as we talked about.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that winds up taking here's the stuff you have to do, but then actually saying, how does it work for us in the district?
Mhm.
And so that's always been the intent, was to say, okay, let's make sure that there's a directionality to it that says, these things are going well, keep doing those. These things are areas for opportunity, let's focus on these 3 things.
Yep.
And so that's the way the board has chosen to use that. And my hope is that what they give us still gives us the latitude to do that, because that's when it becomes useful.
Well, and the statute specifically says, for purposes of assisting the administrator in making continuous improvement,
Right.
documenting continued competence in Iowa standards, or to determine whether the administrator's practice meets school district expectations.
Right.
So, I mean, it has to at least serve those 3 things. But I guess I just think you could come back, you could have achieved all the goals we set for you, and then we might say, yeah, we're really pissed off about this other thing. And it doesn't seem like there's anything to stop us from doing that.
There
I don't know
isn't.
if there could be.
There isn't.
All of which kind of makes it
An interesting exercise.
yes.
Well, keep in mind, you could set all kinds of things for me to do. I could meet all of those expectations, but then as you look at 284.7, if those expectations aren't necessarily in alignment with those Iowa standards, then what do you do? Right?
Or more realistically, I mean, basically, we have 1,000 goals, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're not going to meet all 1,000 goals. So what do we make of that? You know, of course you can.
It is an exercise in complexity.
Or possibly a big waste surface.
Well,
No, I don't mean it that way. I do think directively, it's obviously, how else would we let you know what we want?
procedurally,
Weird.
I was thinking that we ought to spend some time talking about this in a work session at some point, and then I changed my mind. I don't really think there's any point in making this any better. Well, obviously, Mr. Lynch will be aware of what's going on, but why we spend any more time going over something beyond what's on this Appendix 2 sheet until
Yeah.
somebody else gives us more direction. And in the meantime, I guess, time from now until June of 2016, and we'll just proceed along the path that has been constructed, whether it makes a whole lot of sense or not.
Save your handouts, now the 3 of us have a leg up on the other 4 for that discussion.
That's right.
I've got 2 binders, so I feel like I'm on you.
Wow. Well, if you were hoping that all those materials would provide some clarity, or if you were hoping that it provided some confusion, you were successful one way or the other.
I was gonna say successful on both, and part of the reason that I left all that in there, because I did talk to him right before the break in December, but those were all carryover materials for last time, so I didn't want to just unilaterally yank them all off the agenda, so Chris, sorry that you had
Oh,
lots
it's all
of
right.
extra
That's
reading
all right.
materials. But I'll follow Tom's directive and put a few more notes in next time, which
Yeah,
might
just-
save you some
just
reading.
Tell us why it's, you know, or
Yeah,
even.
I assumed I was not supposed to read the 48-page
Oh
folder.
boy, I hope you
Yeah.
didn't read that one, yeah.
No, just some explanation about
You bet.
why all those things were loaded in there. I mean, I got it, but on the other hand, I went, there's something
Missing.
there's something missing.
Yeah. All right.
All right, since there's nothing to do about this particularly, we will move on. Looking at the next set of appendices, which include Appendix 7, once again here.
Hang on, I've been logged out.
And looking here again, we're looking at language, we're looking at language changes for these.
Yes.
So what document are you looking at?
We've got 5, 7, and 9 in there.
Okay, good. And that's the stuff we did last time, we're just
Right.
looking at the
Yep,
changes that we
we're
made.
just looking at the language. Which.
Did you want to do any language stuff on appendix 2? Because I had a couple of minor ones.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm not sure it's worth
We can go.
fussing over.
Oh, go ahead.
All right, well, if you're there on appendix 2,
Sorry, Chris.
you're okay. Second paragraph, second line. First sentence talks about goals, second sentence starts off with this plan. I thought maybe you should say these goals.
Hmm. Mhm.
Further down,
I have something in the third
yeah, go
paragraph.
ahead.
Board Policy Series 301.3. I can't find any Board Policy Series 301.3.
There you go.
We go from the 200s to the 400s. And I went to administrative guidelines, and 301 has something to do with administrator, but there is.
You know how that happened? When
This is
we
before
renumbered
Gail
them? Yeah, when Gail renumbered
Purged,
them.
yeah,
We'll
you're
have to go
exactly
back,
right.
and we have the old policy manual, so we can look at it and figure out
Beautiful.
which 301.3 is, and we'll get the right citation.
I bet it's administrative guideline 301 for vetting.
It's actually probably still a board guideline, but it
Mhm.
probably has a different number now.
Okay.
So we will go find that.
Okay, cool.
All right, jumping down to October. Superintendent and board, shouldn't that be update progress?
Yes?
Yeah.
And then I thought maybe in the parenthetical at the end, if you say maybe done in closed session, because it's not referring back to a session. It's not, telephone
Yeah.
seem like forever.
Oh, okay, sure.
Yep.
Maybe
And
done
down
in,
the very last bullet point, evaluation should either be singular or has been and should be have been.
Anyway, where's that?
The last bullet point.
Evaluations has
Yes,
been
nice, next
discussed.
cycle of, should be evaluation after that. Is that the one you're looking at?
Now, look at the very last bullet point.
Yep.
So the board president, superintendent sign the evaluation as evidence that the evaluation
yep, I
has
think
been
it's,
discussed, like a plural evaluation.
Yeah.
And probably at the end of the sentence too, it says
Yep.
evaluations, and that should probably also be just evaluation, next cycle of
Sure,
evaluation.
yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay.
I would probably stop at that first comma, I'd put a period, and then just remove an and and put the written evaluation
Fine
as
with
next
that.
to the district's personnel file will be incorporated in the next cycle of evaluations.
Okay, where are you now?
It's a run-on sentence. That last bullet point, same thing Director Lee was talking about. When you reach the comma,
Oh, okay.
period,
Yep.
strike and, capitalize the, we're good to go.
Oh, one other thing, in February, the second bullet point, board formally evaluates superintendent's performance in closed session. I assume it would be in a closed session, but it can only be in a closed session if it meets the statutory requirements.
Correct.
And if it doesn't, it can be. And so I'd be more comfortable if it just said in accordance,
Huh.
in compliance with the law, statutes about closed sessions or something like that.
And the superintendent will request a closed session.
Well, I think if that, and that's in the state statute, so if you
Right,
put
so
in
we can
accordance
only do
with the
it if
state
you request it,
statutes.
right?
Yep.
So we couldn't do it in closed session if you didn't.
Mhm.
And so I wouldn't want to leave it the way it is. There's different ways to fix it. Those are the things I had.
You know what, you could actually use that same language in October too.
Oh, is that right? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, that one says may at least.
But you could, I think you could put that in there too, in accordance with.
mm-hmm,
Well, and actually, the first bullet point under February also says may be held in closed session, this may be done in closed session, is that?
But if we change it to
Yeah.
in accordance with state
Yeah.
statutes, then we
And
can
then
just.
just do it for all of
Yep.
them. That's fine.
Yeah, fine, okay.
All right.
That was-
All right. Well,
Is that it?
this is turning into a much shorter meeting than I was expecting.
You were expecting
I
us
was
to
going to
go
go
over
through
that.
all of these things. And
Yeah, I was a little worried about that too for a minute.
All right, I'm ready to go back.
All right.
Well, thanks for
Everybody can be prepared.
tweaking
All right.
that.
Thus proving my previously stated opinion that we have exactly the right three people.
Well,
on this committee.
sometimes I've given up on lack of hyphenated compound
Yeah.
adjectives and nouns and things. I'm just gonna move on.
Yeah.
And hope that it doesn't cause any legal problems later. Because something wasn't. correctly hyphenated.
We'll go with
Okay,
this.
back to appendix.
So number 5,
Have you highlighted all the changes that you asked for last time?
yeah.
So I think
Think
they're
so.
in there?
And I had a couple things. I just wanted, because I wasn't thinking about it last time, maybe you were, but the third line down, it says, the first 15 items are found in board policy. And I didn't know if we had changed it enough that that wasn't true anymore. I never would figure out if that's true. I don't even know if that sentence even needs to be there.
You know what?
We can check that.
Yeah, I would presume though that you may be correct and that they're
Because
not because this
that
was
was
before the
2007.
But
revision.
How about this, many of these items?
Well,
You could do that too.
or strike it.
Many
Or
of these
just-
items
It
are.
doesn't really matter.
Well, I mean, you know.
You could say that though.
Many because yeah, some of them you can't say, you know, sometimes we choose to ignore some of them, but we can't ignore the ones that are in board policy.
Okay.
I mean,
And you know what? These were renumbered at one point in time, so may I
Yeah,
suggest that we,
yeah, you said
that we
that.
simply say many of these items as opposed to the first 15?
There you go.
Okay.
I'm in favor of that.
Yeah, you.
at least one of these items is found in board policy.
And the only other thing I had, I don't know if anybody cares, number 2, remember we fussed with that last time?
Yep.
We took out the word support,
Right?
because we didn't understand it. But then it's not parallel with the other 20, all of which start with a verb.
Right.
Yeah.
Consider.
Promote.
Promote.
I'm in favor of any of
All right.
You want to promote?
that. Let's go with promote. Okay.
Yeah. But it did get truncated, I think we decided at one point, right?
Mhm.
We had some.
Yeah. I think
It just
Kim had
said safety, did it just say safety or did it say support? It says just one word.
Yeah, it was just support. Yeah, we lost the word safety.
Yes.
Yep.
We had to go back and
Support
look that up.
what?
Support.
But it did start with a verb.
Some kind of support.
Again, in appendix 7, I think we made the changes that you provided last time.
Yeah, so, like I said before, when improving the minutes, I must have flubbed some of the discussion, but it's been a long month, so, no, I just wanted to ask, just to go back, I just want to ask, is the way we have it now, with all the struck, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and now we have a new 2 and 3 renumbered and highlighted at the bottom here. We're receiving names, suggestions from the community. Now, when it came to this last, summer of 2014, we had 150 names for the 3 elementary schools
Yep.
and the new high school.
Right.
And then that was pared down by the committee
Correct.
to a more manageable list. And then committee made the recommendations to us,
Right.
the board, directly.
Right.
Okay. So the way I'm seeing this with the highlighted portions now is that the community's gonna, suggest Harold E. Schlapdocker School, whatever. And then that's gonna be one of 150 potential names, and it's gonna come to the administrative team, who's gonna say, based on, I don't know what criteria.
We took 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6
Yeah.
and put those into administrative guidelines and procedures.
Okay.
So we will do that. The initial discussion was and the reason, I think the reason we took these out was, and I can't remember who voiced the concern, was that this appeared to be delineating an administrative function.
Right.
And so we took that out, put that into policy and guidelines for admin. And then we tried to reduce this to just the functions that the
Okay.
board held.
I do remember that
So
discussion.
we'll have
Thank
2
you.
parallel things, and we'll have a board policy, and we'll have an administrative guideline and procedure, and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 all become the admin guideline and procedure.
Rock and roll. Thank you.
Okay, a couple of quick tweaks. Number 4, committee reviews, shouldn't that be reviews, or do you think the committee is a little
Reviews.
Should be reviews.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then number 5, I want to strike the S on analysis.
Yes.
May approve and may announce, excuse me.
Mhm. Need a little agreement there.
Sure.
That's all I got.
All right.
So, and we've already reported the board the plan for income 579, that's for consideration, correct?
Yeah, we did.
We did report that out in December, correctly, so that'll be
Yes.
something anticipating it with baby breath.
Unless,
All right, yeah.
well, let's look at, what else we looking at 9?
The big thing with 9, if I recall, was
Oh,
to
yeah.
bring the district operating expense
Right.
paragraph.
Instead of having it multiple times.
Right.
Yeah.
Instead of a codicil or whatever.
Now, interestingly, when we did that, we took a look at it, and I have a question for you.
Okay.
Because the way this reads right now, and this was actually brought up when we were going through it to make sure that everybody understood all the pieces were on here. It says, facility projects can impact district operating expenses in many ways. Purposes appendix, anticipated changes to district operating expenses, including blah, 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 will be specified as possible when given the level of design at the time. I think, but I need your input, that we're talking about new buildings, major renovations. You're not talking about replacing the carpet in room 201. You're not talking about painting the wall in room 202. You're talking about major projects, right? The only reason I ask that is because otherwise this would appear to imply that we should do an expense analysis on every project in the district.
Gotcha.
And we literally do thousands of projects. When you think about summer work, for instance, all the rooms that are painted, carpeted, et cetera.
Those things, do they all go through appendix 9?
Some don't, because they're not of
I thought this would
scale.
only apply to the stuff that was going through appendix 9.
But, okay, so like the bathroom project at West. at
Yeah,
West-
I was gonna
that
say,
goes through appendix 9.
some of them would. Some of them would, just because I think about it, you might have, some of our paving projects, things like that would rise to a level that are sufficient that they're gonna wind up coming through there.
So then,
It's
when
the
they
cost
come
threshold,
through,
right?
Yeah, I think there is a
Right.
dollar threshold.
Yeah, that's why I'm thinking, I'm going through my mind mentally and thinking which things are gonna cross the dollar threshold.
but then, I mean, they'd be telling us the price of those things as they came along, would they?
Yeah, you definitely get that, but this, I think, is the projection of ongoing operating expenses.
Right.
And the
So-
concern that
So
was,
like the vacuuming of the carpet?
yeah, exactly, they looked at it and they said, oh my goodness, we could wind up literally spending all of our time just
So-
doing projections for costs. So their question was, is this really geared towards understanding, okay, we just put new classrooms on at Penn, what does that mean? We just built a new school, what does that mean? As opposed to, we just painted all the walls in that school, what does that mean?
Right.
So,
But before, when we had it at number 4 and number 5, that didn't solve the problem.
No, and I think that it's kind of like when you guys go through these right now and you look at it and say, hey, wait a minute, this doesn't appear to work in
This
here.
doesn't-
Once it was highlighted in blue and everyone read through it, then they all raised their hand and said, wait a minute, what does this mean? Because I did have to point out that this was already in there and that we just brought it up front so that it wasn't in multiple places.
see, it was hiding at the end, nobody noticed it.
Right.
Including people who work in the district.
Everybody's paying attention to it.
Because it's in blue.
Good idea.
It's highlighted in blue at the front end. I got an immediate response.
Good.
So their question was just intent. Is this really designed for new facilities and major facility renovations? Is there?
Could you say, for purposes of this agenda, capital projects with anticipated significant change? I mean, it's still kind of open, but
Well,
because anything's going to have a change and could potentially.
right, but we're not talking about painting as a capital improvement, generally, are we?
Not usually, but depending on, I think they were thinking about all the worst case scenarios. So if you were to paint the entire inside of the school, that might rise to a level where it's gonna show up on there because of the
Well,
cost.
isn't that the cost threshold then?
Yeah, but it might hit a cost threshold.
Well,
And painting probably wouldn't, but carpet might,
right, but
and tile.
if we all know what a capital improvement is and what the threshold is, then the note would only apply to those things which
That
are
meet the
capital
threshold.
improvements, that meet the threshold.
You're saying even some things that meet the threshold, we might not want to do that.
On the other hand, that could be one of those things where, given that, we could come back to you and ask.
Right.
Because it might be, I'm just thinking as I'm sitting and listening to you talk, it might be hard to specify what isn't, and what doesn't
Right. Yeah,
fit.
it's gonna be hard to write it out.
Right, it might be harder, it might be easier for us to come to you and ask forbearance.
How about when we specify it as feasible or practical? I don't know.
Well, yeah. I mean, I would have a hard time seeing the results of a capital improvement in terms of, say, the replacement of shelving or cabinets, and you take a look at it and you know that it is, I mean, we're looking at plywood with laminate on it. In the meantime, for some reason or somehow, through some magic thing, and this was just hypothetical, but only to a certain extent, the principal of the school has managed to get $20,000 worth of real honest-to-God Omega full oak cabinetry in the main office. Nice, not necessary. But such things could happen, and that would be too much. You know, the cost of the cabinetry, okay, fine, that's what it is, and that's what the budget can bear for not top of the line, you know, classroom cabinets. But on the other hand, you know, the $20,000 oak cabinets in the principal's office is a little much.
So we seem to be talking about this as, is only how Appendix 9 items would potentially increase cost. But the way this is written, we can also highlight decreased costs, like
Sure.
window replacements.
Yep,
Yeah,
You know, doing major window replacements like what happened at City High a
Oh,
few
yeah.
years ago.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a significant energy savings to not have 1939 windows in there. Just saying.
hey, I know better than you do.
I'll tell you what, let's move forward with it as is, and I will go back and talk to our folks in the facilities department, make sure that they understand we're only talking about 9.
The
and
answer
that
is it depends.
And that if there are things that come through the pipeline that look like they will either be time-consuming and not provide valuable data, or difficult to do, that then we can come and ask forbearance for that.
Or are unreasonably expensive. just
Sure.
because.
Sure. All right, very good.
Well, as a point of, again, procedure here, with the language changes that we've agreed to, do we need to look at these language changes anymore, or will it be enough if, okay, so it's except for, are we ready to go ahead with 9 then? Or should we just move 5 and 7 on for board approval?
I think 9's fine.
We're really not changing 9, except we're just moving that
Just-
paragraph
All right.
with an it depends on the blue part.
Just, yeah, just cut out the whole paragraph and just put, it depends. Note, it depends.
We're gonna have t-shirts made.
Depends. Okay, do we need,
Bad
I
idea.
don't know, do we need a
Should've been
motion
on
on
the
this?
exam.
Get a motion?
I
No.
don't think so.
we do.
I think we just add them to the
We're just-
agenda.
Yeah, we're just adding that to the
Appendix
agenda.
5, 7, and 9.
We
Is it
have
also
to-
Sue? Appendix
Oh,
seven?
sorry, yes, 2579.
Yeah, well, with explanation, I mean,
Right.
we're gonna have to explain.
What we've done, yeah, sorry, and it's gonna be the first time you guys have gone through this, I can't remember now. So
probably is.
even without changes, we've put them on for board approval so that then we track the changes at the bottom so that we can see that the review
Right.
process has happened on the 3-year cycle.
Right.
So,
And, yeah, that's all.
all right.
Okay,
To the 26th.
we good to
I
go?
put it right on here.
All right.
Can we add it to the one for the 12th?
Item D.
Awesome.
You doing that?
Oh, so we're also doing.
I will.
We're also doing this.
Mhm.
I was busy playing right now.
So this
I'll
is,
let you do that.
this is just part of the routine calendar, that 3-year
Yeah.
cycle. And it did pop up during the, as you're digging, I can see you're digging for it, it did pop up under the Appendix 2 discussion, so there's a little
Right.
bit of carryover there. And Steve, you just
I
emailed
did.
about level 3A today.
And I'm looking for it. There it is. Yeah, so that was, this was the last thing I think that we had on here, which came up at the last meeting. And so I asked Director Holland if he would just take or Attorney Holland if he'd just take a peek at it. And he gave us his version of language for that. So I offered that to you for consideration. I think that, like I said, I think that was the last piece that we had.
Right.
I don't think it was, oh, there it is. And he did not like that either, just so you know, his initial response was, I don't like that language, the never thing, so.
Oh.
So
Yeah.
that's, I think that was his attempt to provide similar structure, but more appropriate language. So I shared with him, for instance, Chris, your example of, okay, so we're at the board meeting and a direction is
Right.
given and there's a clear understanding that you're saying this and I'm saying let's do that. The direction appears to go from here to here, but clearly there's
You're
a.
sitting there listening. you're
Right,
not
and there's
objecting.
approval,
Yeah.
Right.
right. And so I shared that with him as part of the context for it.
Steve, I know you just emailed that linkage.
Right here.
But I'm having a good time.
Yes, for the paragraph there.
8:03 a.m. Must have put it in, I must have been really on the ball and put it in my folder for this committee. I'm willing to bet that's where it's sitting. And bingo, there it is, 8:03 a.m. That's my myself. So. Chris, it looks like you have a marked
I
up
have some
copy there.
things marked.
Yeah.
You don't always have to do it first, do you?
Go ahead.
All right, well, again, some of it's just technical stuff. I don't know if it's worth organizing. This is very beginning where it says board superintendent linkage. All of the authority of the board of directors, comma, which is delegated to its staff, comma, is delegated through the superintendent. It's not the way I would have written that sentence.
Yeah.
Makes
By the
it
way, I
sound
didn't
like-
ask him to look at any of the rest of the
I
policy. I
understand.
only gave him 3A1.
Right, no. The which is all wrong there.
Yep.
So I would say any authority that the board delegates to its staff must be delegated through the superintendent. I'm not even all that comfortable with its staff, because I don't feel like the board has a staff.
Right.
District staff. But is it worth even talking 2 seconds about? I don't know.
No, I'd say take out the,
Which is delegated to us.
take out that dependent clause there. So it's sort of a verbal one.
Better labels than
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter.
Would that be okay if we said any authority that the board of directors delegates to its staff must be delegated through the superintendent? To the district staff?
I don't know why.
Tell
I just
him.
say delegate to the superintendent, leave the which is delegated
Yep.
to its staff out,
Yep.
strike that.
Yep.
So what's it again? So it's gonna say?
All the authority of the board of directors is
Any of the
delegated through the
authority.
superintendent.
Any.
Any authority. Any authority.
So the board of directors is delegated through the superintendent.
That's fine.
Yep.
Okay. I actually would be fine if you just used the phrase board instead of board of directors every time. Not worth it.
Isn't that what
We
we
knew it was
changed?
one, well, we knew it was one or the other,
Yeah,
because we
yeah.
saw it both ways, and the question was, it should be one or the other.
That's fine.
Oh, the yellow looks pretty.
Level 3A, I did linger over, and I just was gonna see what you thought about it, because it still seemed like it was saying never do something that we still do. And so I'm still tempted to add some words like except with the consent or acquiescence of the superintendent or something like that.
Well,
I don't know if you care enough to, I mean, I think we all sort of understand how it works.
But the new language is what's in the email today, right?
Yeah, that's the stuff that
Maybe
Joe,
that's what I'm not
that's what
seeing.
Joe
I
sent
thought
us.
that was marked on this thing already.
Mm-mm.
No, it wasn't, sorry,
Oh,
that,
sorry.
I just got that from Joe and I forwarded it on.
Oh, yeah, well, I'll just get it real fast. So that's the email from the board superintendent linkage. Oh, here we go. Alright, so, no individual board member will instruction persons who report, yes. Instructions to persons who report revenue will only be given by the board through the superintendent. What do you think?
in some ways, it sounds like the same thing twice, but I think he was trying to be somewhat descriptive,
Mhm.
so,
I think that was the intent.
yeah.
Oops.
Doesn't sound redundant.
Redundant with,
Well, I mean, the two sentences essentially, I mean, is all of the second sentence necessary for the clarity of the,
well, I'm totally with the first sentence.
You could say direction will only be given by the board through the superintendent. Strike the instructions to persons who report directly or indirectly, but I also understand the desire to make it. It
You
doesn't,
could just say.
it doesn't hurt
that
to leave
instead
it.
of persons who report directly or indirectly to the superintendent.
yeah.
I can't get excited about any of it, though, I think.
I'd say, I'm all for going with the Attorney Collins suggestion, even though it's a little bit redundant, but.
Does it clarify anything the way it is now?
Well, the previous 3A1 was the board of directors will never give instructions to persons
Yep.
who report directly or indirectly.
I think everybody didn't like that,
Right.
including Joe.
Yeah.
So I think if
So I think
that
this is better
replaces
than that.
3A1.
It is better.
And then 3A2, leave as is.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah.
Sure.
All right, 2C, second sentence. Just wasn't sure what it meant, okay? I think it's after something that makes sense, but, you know, it certainly doesn't mean that we can't come back and ask for a different interpretation in the future, or clarify things or change things. But the way it's written, the board will support the superintendent's reasonable interpretation of existing policies.
I think, I could be mistaken, but I think this is a, Kim, you might be able to help out here. I think this is a Carver language piece that's in there,
Yeah.
because you see a lot of issues with interpretation in Carver. And it's that idea that anything between aardvark and zebra is reasonable.
Which is to say, we're not supposed to give you a hard time about a
Yeah.
reasonable interpretation.
I think that's where that
That's
comes
what it's
from.
after,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but, you know, it almost seems like it's saying more than that, and that certainly, you know, we're allowed to refine and clarify and
Oh,
all
yeah.
those things, so,
Yeah.
maybe not representative.
Okay. What is in that sentence by intent that doesn't appear in the level 2B paragraph?
Yeah, that's true, and we can strike the sentence, and you wouldn't lose it.
I would say strike the sentence, because it doesn't, it doesn't add anything above what's already there, it seems to me, in the previous paragraph.
Well, see, I see 2C of, 2B is focused more on the superintendent. 2C is how the board reacts to the superintendent's decision in 2B.
Okay.
I see it as saying, okay, in 2B, you said the superintendent can use any reasonable interpretation of board's ends and direction, and superintendent directions. And in 2C, it says, all right, board. He or she did what's in 2B.
Wouldn't you think if, just parsing then, I mean, if you were gonna write it that way, would you actually have the sentences switched in 2C then?
Yeah,
Yes.
Interesting, yeah.
That actually makes a lot of sense.
I mean, it makes more sense if you read it that way, because it's saying,
Right.
I hadn't thought about it till you said it like that, but then as soon as you did, it looks like those two sentences are written backwards.
Okay.
Okay,
Juxtapose.
let's do it, flip it.
Flip it.
Does anybody care enough about this, why do we call them levels? Can we just call
That's
them
part of Carver,
paragraph
isn't it?
one?
I think that's a Carver thing,
Oh.
again.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I think it's a Carver
To me, it's
thing.
mystifying.
We have to unload Carver vocabulary word by vocabulary word. It can be done.
I think it's weird, I think it's, someone sees it and doesn't.
Well, it's hard to
understand
track,
it,
to be honest with you, it's hard to
doesn't
track
understand
because from an outline standpoint, I think that's where the numbering system comes from,
Right.
but
Okay.
it's hard to follow it. I understand that.
Well, that's.
Plus
it's a
even if
nice
we're using an
observation,
outline,
Chris. Yeah.
I would call level 2A, I would call that 1A.
Right.
It's a sub-point of 1.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
they go alphabetically.
Right.
Level 2A and under 2A is 3A. It
Which-
should be A2 or A3.
If you go to Word and pick any one of those outline formats, this
Right.
doesn't.
None of them will be like this.
Okay,
I'm mystified by that, I don't know if
Let's
anybody
get rid
cares
of
about
it.
the text.
what do we want to call them?
But it's also consistent through
It's in everything.
everything,
Oh,
not
is
just
it?
this.
Oh, yeah, you see these levels all over
Step
the
by
place.
step.
Yeah. It's in.
You
super-
mean
It'll take 3
everything else
years.
refers to this?
No, well, that
Or
too,
there are other things
that too, but
organized
there are other
too.
things that use the same level, outline. I don't know if you'd even call it an outline, Chris, but whatever
I'm
it is.
happy to admit defeat, what do you want to do?
Hey, I've already said more than once in public, I'm all in favor of getting rid of the Carver model altogether. If I have to get rid of it word by word, then,
But if we change it, then somebody's got to go through all the other policies, at least catch the references to this policy and change them.
I think short of deciding collective, my humble opinion is if we decide collectively to overthrow the Carver model, then we do it at that time. Otherwise, I think that we're spending our time
Yeah.
piecemeal, one at a time, exactly. 15, 10. I mean, seriously, just one. But I get it, because 2 years ago, I was like, where does this, how does this work? What, level, what? And,
it's like the parking garage levels, they don't make
Exactly.
any sense either.
you know, now that I just admitted defeat probably 24 months ago on it.
Yeah.
But I do agree, I do think that what Tom's saying is that if we chose to change things in an overarching fashion, then yes, then we should go through and take out the hammer and chisel and remove everywhere it says level 2E, 2F, 3A, and make those go away. But I think until then, I think it's a
Well, I don't see how we can tonight do that thing.
But your point is
Your point
absolutely
is
well
sharp.
taken, because it truly is an organizing method, doesn't make a whole lot of sense without the rest of the method offered there, but it's certainly something to consider.
Put it way down on our features. Well, should I keep going?
Sure.
Yeah, if we're not going to reorganizing this document, sure, go ahead.
Well, 2F and 3F, I just found really hard to understand. So starting with the first sentence, 2F, I hate that sentence. Systematic and rigorous monitoring of superintendent job performance will be based solely on organizational accomplishment of board policies and ends and organizational operation within the boundaries established in
long
board
sentence.
policies and superintendent recommendations.
Gotta take a deep
First of
breath
all, it
before that
implies that
sentence.
unsystematic monitoring and non-rigorous monitoring can be based on anything we want. I think what it means to say is the board's monitoring of the superintendent's job performance will be systematic, comma, rigorous, comma, and based solely on these things. And maybe we can number them or something. So just in terms of the sentence structure, I would do that. But I also kind of just didn't understand what it meant. We based solely on organizational accomplishment of board policies and organizational
That sound
operation
Carverish
within
again.
the boundaries of the policies.
You think it sounds very Carverish.
Yeah, but what does it mean? I mean, so what's it trying to prevent us from monitoring?
Anything that's not an organizational accomplishment?
Right, and then
Yeah,
you
I
have
don't
to
know.
square it with that statute that we were looking at, which requires us to
Monitor
look
many
into-
things that are not organizational.
Well, that don't seem organizational.
Yeah.
And plus, why would we want to limit it to just organizational stuff? I mean, what if you're sexually assaulting people? I mean, you
Yeah.
know, I mean, it seems like we
Yeah.
can monitor that stuff if we wanted to. I don't mean, of course.
Right, right.
personally. But I mean, there's certainly what's the opposite of organizational? Individual
I
stuff?
guess.
And it doesn't seem, it seems like some of that stuff would be
Yeah.
fair game for considering in a performance evaluation. So I'm just mystified by level 2F completely, and then level 3F.
Could you change organizational just to district?
But then what's it excluding? What's the point of it? It's obviously there to exclude something.
I think organizational is coming from, the Carver.
Well, and ends is
wording that applies
capitalized, so
to
I'm sure that
anything.
is.
Mhm.
So I'm sure.
Well,
that-
still, I mean, I don't understand what it's ruling out.
And
So I would just say based solely on accomplishment of board policies and operation within boundaries established in board policies on
Well,
superintendent direction.
time out for just a second. I think, again, from the how it's constructed standpoint, it would, not saying that the rest of the sentence is good, but if you were to keep this sentence, at a minimum, you'd want to move it to board ends policies, not board policies on ends.
Okay, that's.
Okay,
Yeah.
now, if you say that, then does that exclude the state mandated board policies that you're required to have? It would appear to, because this is only ends policies.
I don't understand what it's excluding, and I don't like, some of the stuff it's excluding seems like stuff that we have to consider on this.
I mean, it seems to be saying that it's focused only on those 6 ends policies, which would then appear to be exclusive of the state mandated.
6 ends policies.
Yeah,
I thought we had like 20 ends policies.
No, we've got literacy, math, science, social studies, character, ed, and fine arts.
Okay.
So it would appear to.
Oh, there's supplements.
Yeah, it would appear to put us just in that realm, and it would appear to exclude the state mandated
Right,
policies.
that worries me partly.
Yeah,
And moreover, I don't understand what the point is of what it's even trying to exclude. It's not trying to exclude.
that I don't know, yeah.
So I don't get it. I just don't get it. Is there some concern that we're going to start monitoring something that would be inappropriate? If so, I'm not catching what it is that it's worried about.
And you almost look back to it and say, was there something being done before 1999
What prompted this
that
thing
prompted
to come
that?
into
Yeah,
existence?
I don't know.
So then, with level 3F, I had similar concerns, but also just some word I didn't understand.
I would almost guess that it might not have been something that prompted it, but rather the fact that when incorporating this model, language was just stolen.
That could be.
It's probably most likely. How do we set up Carver governance? Oh, this looks important. Substitute superintendent, CEO with superintendent, and good.
Well, would anything be lost if we deleted paragraphs 2F and 3F?
Let me go back and look at 2E.
3F3 might be something that isn't somewhere else. Although it says see appendix 3, so.
As such, his or her performance will be measured in terms of the district's accomplishment of the board's ends policies within the, we come back to 2F. Can we come back to 2F? What's the 3F concern?
Oh, come back to it. Well, 3F, it seems to just serve 2F, so.
Sorry, Tom, you did.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I'll catch up.
You know, the first sentence of flow 3F is kind of just repeating what 2F kind of said. And then it's just sort of defining this term monitoring data. This other stuff will not be considered to be monitoring data. Well, what do I care what the definition of monitoring data is? Are they saying we can't look at it?
Is that the management information system?
I just, the whole page is, I didn't get any of it.
Don't you think that's
Oh,
MIS data?
it might be.
Two
It
just
could
seems to
be.
repeat what was on the previous page you've already pointed to.
3F you think is MIS?
Well, I think 3F might,
it might
again,
be.
from a Carver management standpoint, that we have to deliver to you monitoring reports. And those, they codified as the MIS, which I don't remember what MIS stands for now. Management Information System reports. Those are the monitoring reports that we deliver to you. And I'm wondering if they didn't tie those together. I'm just trying to figure out grammatically where the connection is.
Or what is this stopping us from doing? I don't get it.
That one I'm not sure.
Or what is it, instructing you to do it? It's not really. So anyhow, that's my problems with 2F and 3F. I don't get what they're stopping us from doing. Except it does worry me that they seem inconsistent with this statute.
Steve, are you saying that the MIS basically is what subpoint 1 of 3F does?
It's a supposition on my part, but I think that is what they are referring to. I cannot say that with certainty. But my presumption would be based on what I got when I got here and Gail's conversation.
Mhm.
I would think that might be.
What does it mean to say other types of data that the board may review will not be considered to be monitoring data?
That one I don't know.
And it's also, I don't think it's true.
Well, at the very least, we have to monitor these things.
You know, it's interesting, this one doesn't say
Yeah.
ends policies.
Which one, what?
I was just noting that it's interesting that number 1 doesn't say ends policies when that has cropped up in the ones above it, right?
Mhm.
I presume that's what they mean in here, but again, it's not in here. I think that's what, because our MIS reports link to our ends policies.
Right.
They go hand in hand.
Well, I would start from the proposition that unless I can see some reason for these paragraphs to be here.
Get rid of it.
If it's important to say something that the intent, assuming that there's a reasonable intent in these 2 paragraphs, would it be possible to have something that says the MIS does this function, except for the last point, which does sort of cover the entire business as a policy change there. I'll call it it's 3F subpoint 3.
Yeah.
I mean, that one just sort of says, if we need to change it, we will, which probably should be there, but the other ones, number 2, it seems we already talked about in a previous paragraph, farther up the page. Number 1, as Chris points out, doesn't make a whole lot of sense, may be covered by the MIS, and the 2F paragraph is just a nasty sentence.
I don't understand the other pages that are not monitoring data.
And just to add
Means.
one more thing, level 3F, number 3, where it says see appendix 3. our Appendix 3 MIS schedule is 2014, 2015.
What do you mean?
It's just out of date.
It's out of date, that's all.
Oh,
Well, there you go.
Just saying.
Sorry, I couldn't even get the.
That's an
link
easy
to-
one. That's low hanging
I
fruit.
couldn't get the link to open up, so you're a step ahead of me.
Can we fix the language on this thing by, will we lose anything by taking out 2F and rewriting 3F to say, to go along with that supposition that the MIS ends policy reporting actually does all of this stuff? Or it does what the board needs?
From what I see in 2E, I don't see why we couldn't strike 2F. Honestly. I really don't. And then with 3F, I don't know. I mean, I think that becomes, what, 3E, since there's no 2F?
or does it become 2F?
It does become 2F, yes.
Yes.
It could, yes. It depends. It becomes 2F, I think. So we rename 3F 2F.
Yep.
Strike 2F. And
Wow. Do you keep all three of those points?
In 3F?
Yeah.
then those
No.
become A3F, B3F.
Oh, no, don't do that.
C3F.
I can't keep.
Love
track.
it.
What is he talking about?
The only one I was suggesting for changing the last 3 was the question about the MIS thing. If you want to
Yeah.
write that statement,
Well,
Steve and Kim,
is it just MIS or is it also, I mean, because that
I'm trying to
schedule is
figure out what
GEP,
the-
SFR, and MIS.
Well, and I'm back to Chris's point. I'm down trying to determine what the intent of number one is.
I don't know.
Because at first I was reading it, is it monitoring data or is it monitoring data?
I thought
Okay.
it was, again, a compound noun there, monitoring
It's
data.
gotta be monitoring data.
Yeah, that,
I would write that one.
I wouldn't either. And again, I don't agree with the second sentence because I don't think it's true. We bring in all sorts of things.
Or what's the import of saying, of labeling it monitoring data as opposed to some other data that we consider? I'm lost in that.
Well, I
can't even
get
begin
the
to-
I get a definition difference between monitoring data and other kinds of information. I just don't care whether it's monitoring
Yeah.
data or
It's
not.
not really
If
changing
it's-
this.
It's not, and it's not to say, and if you want to rewrite this or not, you can let us know, we can figure it out. But the whole idea, but part of what I'm getting to is, if the monitoring data appears in the MIS, that's one kind of data that we get, and we may choose to and we do use other kinds of data. I would not phrase it as being, will not be considered to be monitoring data. I don't know why that's in there. It's just, other types of data the board may review to develop policy or increase its knowledge regarding the district, period.
Yeah, but then what's in there?
I don't know.
Really descriptive.
I don't know.
Not constraining us at all and not constraining
None
Steve
of
at
us
all.
seem to know why it's there.
And the document is supposed to describe the delegation of
I can't
authority by
realize
the
that
board.
I'm not gonna bring it up.
I don't understand what it is.
So are we looking at this as monitoring is modifying data? So I just want to make sure I'm reading
I'm
this
seeing it as a big
correctly.
noun, monitoring data.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It's not a verb. It's
So
not a
it's
verb phrase.
monitoring data.
Yeah, it's a compound noun.
Wow, I'm just struggling
So
with the
level
sentence.
1. Wow. So level 3F, number 1, monitoring data as a noun is simply to determine,
The degree to which
That's
the
what I was
board
trying to figure out
policies
if it was
are
a
being.
but why would simply be in there? Because simply would imply that monitoring is a verb.
That's why I was struggling with this, because I'm like, is this a verb?
Oh, I see. Because I took it as a noun.
Monitoring data
Yeah,
is
that's-
simply to determine the degree to which.
That doesn't make sense.
But even then, I'm struggling with that too.
But none of us
Simply,
thinking of it as
it's hard to
a
read.
noun.
Okay, I get it. But
But
We
it should,
monitor
because the
data,
noun
so
should be
we
monitoring data
determine
is
that-
provided to determine, or monitoring data is
Well,
Yeah.
wouldn't you,
Used, no, it's bad.
I mean, is it, are you really looking for, and I go beyond data to information, I mean, is it the information provided in management information system reports? Or is it the content of management information system reports shall be used to determine when board policies are being met? I mean, that, I'm just trying to actually put something together that provides some direction, because I don't know what direction this provides. I'm just really struggling with this
Yeah.
sentence.
In the sentence,
I'm still trying to figure out if it's a verb.
Yeah.
if it's to determine to the degree to which board policies are being met, that seems to be kind of an odd evaluation platform.
Well, why is it linkage?
Yeah, why
I
is
don't
it
know.
there at
Okay,
all?
now, that's another question I ask you, why is it linkage?
I don't know.
It really sounds like, at the first sentence, it sounds like it's saying you can't use monitoring data for this reason, to some reason that I can't figure out.
May I suggest simply striking the sentence?
Be okay with me, or actually, the whole, parts 1 and 2, and again, I think all.
Well, isn't 2 up
Fine.
above already?
Yeah. For
Fine.
me, it's already stated.
Okay, so make 3F, 2F, strike 2F, remove sub 1 and 2 from what will be the new 2F, and
then
leave
just
3.
paragraph 3 there.
Yeah.
And call it 2F.
So, sub-bullet 3 down there becomes 3F, or 2F.
2F, right.
All right.
Yep, everything else is gone.
Done.
If,
Oh, thank God.
if for some reason,
What a headache on that one.
never
My
mind,
eyes hurt.
I'm letting this one go. Let's just tell her again. Do we have to bring this back to the full board for approval after the language gets tweaked?
Yeah,
We
I
have to,
think-
But it won't take a motion to do so, it won't take a motion from our committee to do
Right.
so, it'll just.
Well, and I don't think the board actually has to vote on these when they come up. I think you simply present the fact that you reviewed it, we date stamp it on the bottom,
Okay.
because we haven't voted on
Did we
them
talk
yet.
about
Do
this?
we
Yeah, but if
vote?
they're changing them, I
So
think we
what-
have to.
If, oh yeah, sorry,
We're
that's right,
changing
if
them,
you're
we have
changing them,
to.
we do vote
Yeah.
on
We
it.
have to vote on it, but
Otherwise-
we don't have to do 3 readings.
Right.
of
No,
it,
no.
Which is.
Yeah, change, that's right, changes we vote on, but things that aren't changed, we can simply bring those forward and say if they've been reviewed, and then we date stamp them.
Right.
All right. Whoosh. All right.
Okay. Are we done with that?
There is another thing on our agenda, is there not?
Yes, I do, I see it. Well, 2 things. Jen's saying.
All right.
Are there any other questions about the previous stuff though before we?
I think I've got my notes. I know
I've got
Kim was
notes,
taking
too.
notes, and between the two of us, we will be good to go.
Okay, part B here is a result of, well, we brought this up at a board meeting after the other continued discussion about, well, I don't know what we would call it. Outside interest, I mean, conflict of interest is just is a catch-all here to introduce it as much as anything, but, I think we know where we're headed with this as a topic, and it's just, there's as I'm often accused of saying, there's a philosophical issue here as well as somewhat of a practical one, and to bring it back to not just you, Steve, but other administrators in the district. There are people who do have other educational interests, shall we say, that they pursue. And the question is, whether or not we should allow this, and in certain cases, are there conflicts of interest in, for any particular person doing a particular kind of job? And it would be easy enough to say, and you have said, there are plenty of districts that allow superintendents to do this, and there are plenty of districts who don't. And it's not just superintendents, but it's other administrators, and we do have other administrators who do other kinds of work. The question is this okay or is it not? And if it's, and that's, to some extent the opening of the discussion, without getting into anybody specifically, although it could come to that, I guess. For teachers, the negotiated agreement speaks to that, but they are on a 189, 188, 99, whatever the number is now. I forgot to cut off the 5 days now. Whatever, 185 days rather than 189, whatever the length is now. When they're not on contract time, then they are allowed to go do other things in other places for other kinds of remuneration. Administration's in a different kind of contract setting, and again, you guys do pretty much work all year. There are a couple gray areas in the negotiated agreement, I think, but even to the terms of if you go serve on jury duty, you get your $10 a day, you're either supposed to refuse the $10 or turn it in. Yeah. And honestly, to be quite honest, there are a couple of gray areas in there because people they will take perhaps a personal day and will, go the half a mile from here and go do a Friday afternoon at ACT and get paid handsomely for it. I assume this still goes on. Most people who do that kind of work do it in the summer. It is educational work, but the negotiated agreement does not prohibit that. And if we get into interesting territory by saying, okay, look, nobody's going to do this anymore, then that will become. We couldn't do it under the auspices of the kind of contract that the state has for certified employees who work a fixed amount of time. Way back in the day, teachers did all sorts of things to make up money. They chose to get their entire salary in the length of their contract, and that used to be a choice. You didn't have to get paid year-round. You could take your entire salary in 9 months, and didn't get paid at all during the summer. This, of course, doesn't cover paras and other kinds of employees necessarily who don't get year-round employment. We can have a quicker meeting here. That we all sit in silence and
Well,
the recording goes on, but
I'm not interested in doing anything covered by the collective bargaining agreement.
right.
To the extent that this is on the thing at all, it's, I think the only reason to do anything is because if there are conflicts of interest that might be out there with people in a position to actually, direct business one place or another, or recommend business with one entity or another, who might simultaneously be out there having some kind of contractual relationship with those entities. That's the worry that I think needs to get addressed. I don't know exactly what the right thing to do is about it, but that's what I'd be talking about. could imagine somebody in that position doing work that doesn't pose any sort of concerns.
Right.
And people do. Right.
Well, I mean, anybody, just a ballpark in here, teaching Sunday school, for example. I mean, it's teaching.
Right, yeah, teaching people.
Plenty of people do other kinds of jobs. I could name some staffs of some schools that can build you a house. Absolutely build it for you. You know, that they've got that much construction talent and they're certified. Yeah, fine. You guys want to go build houses on weekends and do whatever, that's fine. You know, on the other hand, and there are a lot of things that stipulate what can and can't happen on school property with certified employees doing certain kinds of activities, either that they haven't been contracted to do. That's, but if people are offering their expertise in whatever time frame while they're still under the larger contract, their administrative contract, and they are offering expertise for pay that falls under the auspices of educational whatever. That's the ballpark. This is more specific what we're talking about here.
And I feel like the discussion is here for us more because there were insinuations made recently that there were, conflict of interest decisions made regarding relationships with, I felt it was more business related more than what teachers might be willing to
Right.
negotiate a contract.
Yeah, I agree. I was just using that as the contrast example. I mean, that stuff's covered in there. I don't know.
I don't know what we're supposed to do with this. I really don't.
Well, I guess I'm thinking there's different things you could do. One is, you could say that a certain category of people, and I'm thinking it's a small category of people who are in a position to actually influence.
Administrators, board of directors, so and so
Administrative board of
forth
directors.
should have full disclosure. And
You could certainly say disclosure. You could, if you wanted to, say our administrators should not work outside the district for anybody, period. You could say, well, they can do it as long as they clear with the board first. You could say, well, they can do it as long as it doesn't pose any possible conflict. Or you could say, they can do it even if they don't clear with the board, they don't tell the board. And what we have right now, as far as I can tell, is they can do it. They don't have to tell the board. Steve has to tell Chris. Chris doesn't have to tell us. That to me is not ideal. I could be voting on something without even knowing that somebody, maybe Steve, actually has some relationship with the vendor, which seems problematic.
And we do have an administrator who has had, and I don't know whether it's current or not, and probably can't ask at this meeting format, a facilities planning company. I don't know whether this person still has this or not. And if the argument were made, well, yes, he does, but he's never offered his services to the district or been asked to, then that may or may not be a conflict of interest. On the other hand, if he is operating this business and he does deal with vendors that we share, is there anything going on there that would constitute?
And I would also say that board members, any of this applies to board members as well. Because I know that previously Patty would recuse herself from anything
Having to do
during
with
the
United
United Way.
Yeah.
And even though I didn't need to, I pulled out of
voting on certain things with vision plans, vision insurance plans, just because I didn't want the appearance that somehow I was gonna benefit from this. And I know Chris has pulled himself from things where his wife, you know, he's voting on something that involves his wife's employment.
Yep.
And while that's certainly good form, it's not required. I like, you know, when you lay out, when you, Chris, say, you know, we could do this, we could do this, this, or this, I like at the bare minimum, just, you know, disclosure of relationships.
There might be certain types of work that we would say no. We can categorically say no. For example, I think if a vendor wants to pay Steve privately to meet with Steve and lobby him for his product, to me, I might say no, you know, under no circumstances. But then there might be other things that we'd say, well, you know, as long as you let us know, it'll be fine. So there's a lot of different ways you can go with it. But right now, it just doesn't seem like we have anything to address any of those possibilities. Much. I don't know how much we can do about it tonight, but just kind of get a feel for where people are on it. Right.
Is there any research you need me to do?
I think the, you know, one of the things that is always helpful, or has always been helpful to me, is what do the other large districts do? Because they're, especially like Des Moines, for God's sake. I mean, there's some entities that we use out of Des Moines because they're the only ones in the state who can provide the services. So there's got to be. I mean, I guess a feeler out to other supers in other soups in different, you know, UEN districts or something, saying, hey,
Well, maybe.
do you guys have some type of conflict of interest?
It might be, better, or it might be, it'd be a different way to do it, but I might ask Joe to go to the, and I can't remember the acronym for it now, but the School Attorneys Association.
Yeah.
And have the School Attorneys Association offer it, because you might, you'd likely get the UEN folks, but you might get a broader array from the 346 districts. Because many of those attorneys represent more than one district, so you find sometimes similar language, district to district type of thing. So rather than the districts, but if you went to the attorneys, you might wind up with more examples of that. You might wind up with a lot.
Or
of
none.
Or none. Yeah.
Well, and then if they looked at us, they'd find none. Another thing that would be, I think, challenging about doing anything along these lines is, I don't know what my 401k is invested in, I have no idea.
Right.
Yeah.
So things like that, I don't think you can really expect people to disclose conflicts because they don't know. That might be true of, you know, my kid's 529 funds. I don't know how invested, it might be conflicts.
Yeah. It's not really.
So you have to delineate what has to be
Yes.
disclosed and what doesn't have to be disclosed.
Yeah. I don't think that's what, it's
I mean,
not the intent here.
On the other hand, if I owned the land right next to Liberty High and I'm voting on where to put that high school,
Well-
I think I should have to disclose that. You know, so I do think
That
in the right circumstances, we would want some disclosure.
That also has been an issue
so,
with both board and administrative investors locally.
Well, I didn't mean that to represent anybody specific.
I'm not mentioning anybody, I'm just
so we can
telling
go,
you.
we can go incredibly restrictive or nothing. We know what end of the spectrum we're on right now. And somewhere betwixt the two lies where we probably should be, even if it's a simple statement of known conflicts of interest should be disclosed by, as you know, as you put it, decision-making individuals, decision-making.
Yeah, we'd have to define it somehow.
Yeah. But it doesn't have to be terribly I mean, so using the board as an example, there's nothing that says that Chris has to recuse himself when voting on something. Or there's nothing that required Patty to step away.
Right.
And say, this has to, there's nothing out there. It's the right thing to do. But having it, I don't disagree with having something that says that this is the right thing to do. And if you don't do it, and you do have a relationship and you're benefiting financially and you have a relationship, then you can say, look, here's the policy.
Yeah.
It does have to be very carefully written. I mean, we're all affected by district decisions.
Right.
Anybody's kids in the schools.
Well, I don't see anything wrong with having that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you'd have to write it pretty tightly because, you might be accused of making decisions about attendance areas
Right.
based on house values.
That's right.
I mean, I'm just, if it's not pretty tightly written, it
Well-
constricts your ability to vote on anything.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if it makes sense. I don't know if it does.
We could end up with 7 people recusing themselves from vote on attendance areas. Mine will go up, mine will go down. I'm out. And there we have the quick meeting.
I think we're talking about it, we're talking about employment here, aren't we specifically, or more specifically?
Well, when you say employment,
Well,
what about board members though? Yeah, there was some big conflict of interest,
Well, I mean,
or at least.
Brian's already spoken to that to some extent though.
I'd say take the option to see what Joe can provide.
Yeah, I
I
agree.
mean, we're not gonna write it tonight.
No,
Right,
we're
right,
not.
that's right.
But that's someplace
Put a
to
lot of work
start.
into writing it, because I knew where the board was.
Well, and when I look at this calendar, honestly, for our committee, I know this is just finishing up the 3rd year of the 3-year cycle. For our committee, that's something that we can work on, that we can actually start. We can do that from scratch and churn out, and we really are motivated to do so.
Yeah,
Because we're done with about 80% of the mandatory stuff that we need to go through.
good.
So we got a spring cleaning project. But starting with some information, see if other districts have something, I think is a reasonable place to start, is any.
I agree.
Cool.
Just want to just carry it over to the next meeting and see where.
Yeah, and
Let's bring this to agenda setting.
There you go.
and Joe is welcome to come.
I will let him know.
Probably be a good idea.
Yeah, probably would.
Plus, maybe he can report back to us on that open meeting stuff, and I'm still curious. I don't know if he's ready to or
Yeah.
not.
I'll make a note on that too.
See, we're already doing agenda setting. That's not bad.
All right. Well, thanks for
So,
diplomatic discussion.
okay, so linkage and all the on the crazy levels, we've got a plan on that, just to reiterate. 579, we've got plans on that, including blue highlighted on 9. In appendix 2, we've got plans on that. Conflict of interest, we're going to Joe.
Are you getting this? Okay.
Um,
I'm writing it, Joe.
Yeah, and then you asked about the open meetings thing, and then the only other thing that we have on our calendar is superintendent directions.
The open meetings thing would have to be for the full board, not for us.
Okay.
Oops.
We had superintendent directions 2A, B, F, G, and K.
I don't have the thing in front of me. Thanks, Brian.
Sorry,
2B.
2A, B,
Oh, he's looking ahead.
F,
Okay.
G, and K.
All right.
Level something.
Can we skip over, whether it's what we skip over just, or for some other year or what?
Yeah, some of them are more involved.
HI
than
and-
others.
Ah, okay.
HI
I'm not
and-
gonna complain.
Chair.
I,
Why is that?
this is what I have,
Yeah, I'm looking at the same thing.
A, B, F, G, K.
Oh, yeah, sorry. That rotated over.
Oh, shoot, am I?
No, no, you're on the right one. You're on the right one. I just already have it up for 17, 18.
Okay,
So, yeah,
A,
A,
B,
B,
F,
F,
G,
G,
K.
K.
yes.
What's the date
Because
of this one? February what?
Don't know.
we do, yeah, because we do C, D, and E next year. and we did HI&J last year.
I'm not complaining.
And it's based
February
on
2.
trying to make the piles equal.
Ah, very good.
Yes.
So that would, February 2? Groundhog's Day, we can relive the meeting over and over again.
Great.
All right.
Awesome.
So look forward to there.
You're welcome. Ooh, that's not the caucus, is it? No, that's Monday.
Hey, that caucus thing, that's the first.
That's
Monday
the first.
Are we making any, I'm just curious, is this making any effort not to schedule stuff on the first? I heard somebody complain about something that was scheduled for the first, and of course, you don't know until like 2 weeks ago that the caucus is going to be the first.
Yeah, you know, I don't know. We always struggle with that. The ones that we always stay away from are religious holidays, Muslim, Jewish, Christian religious holidays. Sometimes that winds up being the only day available, for others. I know we've had the issue with Election Day in the past. They've scheduled stuff on
So
election
the
nights.
caucus, February 1st is what day of the week, is it a Tuesday or Monday?
Monday.
It's a Monday.
Mondays
There usually
are
aren't very many
quiet here.
things on Monday night.
There's nothing on the district calendar, but there could be
Yeah, there could be something
sporting
in the
events
building.
or something at the
Yeah,
buildings.
It's just not out there yet, yeah.
Anything else for agenda setting? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.